Attractive teachers of Reddit, did you know which students had a crush on you? And what is the strangest or most inappropriate thing you overheard said about you? A female teacher of mine was told by a student, during an exam, to sit down, because if he sees her body his blood is rushing into other directions, instead of his head. There is a non-verbal very large severely autistic young man at my school, who goes into a rage and attacks other teachers and students, and flips tables and desks, if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, when he wants me to be. I think maybe I remind him of someone else. I'm a middle-aged woman with kids older than he is. He badly injured a teacher last week, when I had a meeting, and was not at lunch. He stares at me from across the cafeteria or gym and looks away smiling every time I look over. I'm not his teacher and he doesn't react this way to anyone else at the watch all. Male teacher here. I've had a number of students who I've found out had crushes on me. They're usually the ones who find any reason possible to be around you, but on top of that I've had some more obvious signs. One girl ran into class and jumped into my lap while I sat behind my desk and nestled down a bit. I'm not allowed to touch students, so I had to get two other students to remove her. Another girl would make the ahegao face at me every day for about a week and asked if I like it. I had no idea what it meant at the time, so I asked, and she made a masturbation gesture with her hand. Another girl wore a ring around school and told people she snack were married. Those were the worst, but there are usually a handful of them every year. I make it a point to look unkept now as it's super dangerous getting into these situations. I also try to have the students move to another class if possible. Most people think I should be flattered by it, but all I can think about is losing my job and being labeled a child pervert. When I was around 25 I used to substitute, and it was mainly at a pretty affluent high school. There were girls who would come by my room between classes just to hang around and talk. Then there was the girl who wanted me to read her poetry. The funniest was the drama class I subbed for, where they didn't even try to be subtle. It was a very loosey-goosey class anyway. In the school's theater, there were 3 girls who crowded around me the whole class and were asking for my phone number and my address because they wanted to come hang out. I told them we couldn't. One day I was at the mall with a buddy of mine, and a group of high school girls saw me and came running up to me, kinda hanging on and around me and talking. My friend shot me a look. I mouthed aside and I swear I haven't touched them. I met a guy around that time. He was kind of a jerk, who was bragging about secretly dating a high school girl from that school. He was mid to late 20s. When he found out I subbed there, he said, "Oh, you're the substitute with the goatee they're always talking about. You're kind of a legend with those girls. You should hook up with some." I soon decided to stop substituting. I had a student with a crush on me. I was in my late 20s teaching seniors in high school. He constantly emailed me with questions about college applications and stuff. But sometimes his friends would hack his account and send me emails from his account saying how much he loved me. I responded and said I cares about him, but only as a student. After he graduated high school he would email me when he was drunk saying he loved me, then he would follow up the next morning saying he never meant to send that. I didn't really respond to those. When he graduated college he did try to ask me out for ALs, and I turned him down again politely. Not a very lewd story, sorry, but an actual experience and I suppose an actual answer to the question. I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm currently finishing up my education to become a teacher at what would be the equivalent of high school level in the US. However, over the course of my studies I have had to teach a bunch of, usually supervised, classes. My subjects are computer sciences and history. About 2 years ago, I taught a class in computer sciences. Very basic stuff, really not what I want to be teaching, but I guess someone has to do it. So this class was split into 2 groups, which I taught separately on different days. The groups should have been split randomly, but by sheer chance, one group was 100% girls only, and the other was one predominantly male. I taught the same classes to both of these groups, mind you, exactly the same stuff, same worksheets, etc., etc. Those kids were a bunch of teenagers around the age of 15, maybe 16. Now I remember distinctly how surprised I was at the different outcomes from these 2 groups. Stereotypically, girls have a harder time with computer sciences. I don't mean this in a sexist way. In fact, I would see this as a result of a sexist society. But usually, the boys pick up on some things faster. Not in this case. The girl-only part of the class was fucking focused to a point where I couldn't even provide enough worksheets to fill the lesson. What I remember the most about it was how they listened to everything I said. As a HS level teacher, that is not something you're used to. Usually you just hope that like 25% of what you say somehow finds its way into their minds. But these girls picked up on everything I said, asked questions, and seemed really interested in the subject. So I told a couple of female friends of mine about this. I was praising this class. La, isn't this great? This just smashes the stereotypical way of thinking. This is what happens when you give female students a chance to excel in something that our society doesn't usually associate with women, blah blah blah. All of these female friends looked at me at once and went, dude, they're into you. You're a 24-year-old decent looking substitute teacher. You're the dream. I wouldn't have any of that. Surely, a bunch of 15-year-old girls couldn't be interested in a teacher almost a decade older than them. Well, all of that got crushed when I finished the last lesson that I taught in that class. When I was packing my things, a group of these girls walked over to my desk and sheepishly asked what I was doing after school and whether I would come back to their school at any time. The disappointment when I told them that I probably won't come back wasn't the kind of disappointment you get when the students really enjoyed your classes. It was the disappointment of teenage girls with a crush. On the plus side, my supervisor gave me stellar feedback on those lessons. Told me he never saw the class this engaged. Obligatory not a teacher, but I had a massive crush on one of my high school teachers, and I'm sure he knew. I was always finding excuses to hang around his classroom and talk to him. I wasn't the only one either. There were a handful of girls and a couple guys who would all spend our spare time in his vicinity. Looking back now, it was so obvious and weird that I did it, but he was my first serious crush, and I had zero chill. I visited every now and then when I'd go home from college, and we are friends on Facebook still. And he's also still super handsome and a genuinely nice dude. I'm a 27-year theater teacher. I didn't overheard anything, but I've been hit on by students. One girl who like horses, 17. Did you know that girls who ride horses are better at sex? My reaction, wow, you crossed a line here. It was the first time something like that happened, and had no idea how to react, so I've been violent, and may have hurt her feelings, but, well. Last year, another kid, 17 also. We are doing an exercise where each student have to walk in front of the others, and then the other ones have to try to copy them. It's her turn to walk. You like to watch me walk, sir? She later on asked me if I had a girlfriend, and tried multiple times to flirt with me. I usually just said something simple and funny in the context that made her stop during a little time. She definitely stopped after a few months, when she finally understood she had no impact on me. The same year there was also this student that so obviously had a crush on me, but never did, or said anything in that direction. It was more of a general behavior. Once another student mentioned it during a class in an attempt to shame her, and I had to shut him off. I also work with adults, but it's a lot easier to deal with, as they are adults, and often compartment things better, so I never had to deal with anything like that yet. I'm student, and was in my last big teaching session before my finals. After just 1 week of teaching, I landed on an Instagram site where pupils secretly post things they want to confess about them or their teachers. They called me the hottest teacher ever, and published my name, surname, and relationship status. That felt pretty strange. One girl said, in my case she would have not a single problem of me being pedophile. I'm a male teacher, and there's one girl who either has daddy issues. I know from her oversharing she has a stepdad, or has a crush on me. She might just be needy, but she is always calling me over to ask for help, when she clearly figures it out on her own or one of her also smart friends could help. She's also always telling me all the smallest details of her life. Much more so than my other students. Like I said, she might just be needy, but I don't know. Obligatory not a teacher, but my girlfriend is. She absolutely knows which kids have a crush on her, and generally uses it to have them wipe the board and other small stuff. The strangest rumor about her was probably when the kids told her they thought she wasn't gonna be here that year because she was pregnant. I'm a woman. If she was, we'd have known. Where this rumor came from, absolutely no idea. I dated a girl a few years ago. Seems wrong, a teacher and is insanely gorgeous. Right before she left the country, she started teaching at a high school. Pretty much all the boys had a crush on her for the few months she was there. One of them acted really weird with me one of the few times I dropped by to pick her up. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when she later joked about it, it was like being hit with a ton of bricks. English teacher here. Girls on puberty just seem to want to have a crush on any guy that's somewhat close to them and unreachable for an actual relationship, and a teacher fits it perfectly. Teenager girls keep trying to approach physically and use any excuse to hug me, and if I don't set clear limits they try to touch me. Nothing explicit or really bizarre ever happened to me, but it really feels weird sometimes. I don't think I'm attractive, but I heard some students commenting about my ass a couple times. Besides that, last semester I was lecturing classical mechanics. I could swear that the boy who always sits in front of my desk stared at my tits every time I was writing something. About 3 weeks ago, I'm not his teacher anymore. He knocked the door of my lab looking for me. He then asked if I would go on a date with him. I'm a 23-year physicist. I'm not attractive, but I did find out a 3rd grader had a crush on me because she straight up told me. I had suspected it because she would give me a hug basically every time she saw me and say things like Mr. Leaflet is so funny, cool, and handsome. She did go through a phase where she randomly hated me and refused to talk to me most of the time. But then after a couple weeks of that she randomly gave me a hug one morning and said I like you again. That kid was a little boy crazy. When I was in high school one of my friends said how he would bang the shit out of milliseconds Richards and how he wondered how big her tits were. There were 3 milliseconds Richards at my school, so before you go all he used her name you would never know which one, even if you knew where I went to school. Well, milliseconds. Richards was standing about 2 feet behind him when he said this. She let it pass, but clearly heard it, and she blushed a little and went back to her desk. The next year we were handing in our geography finals, and she said I hope you do well next year to my friend, and gave him a piece of paper along with a report card that would only be altered by the test we just took. The note read 34D. He looked at her, and she was smiling ear to ear. He went blood red, and walked out of the room. He never did anything with her, it was just awesome. She did have sweet cans. Wholesome sharing. I teach 6 to 8 year olds, so this is a very SFW story. One of my students who was a boy would always stare at my face then squeeze my cheeks and lay his face on my arm because I was cute. He also showers me with compliments, and whenever I have makeup on he would say I look like a celebrity. Of course at that age, they do not have the concept of crush yet, but still. The thought that a kid finds me good looking is still a confidence boost because at least someone finds me cute, hahaha. I have a student who won't leave me alone. He's in my room every chance he gets, even so far as getting to school an hour and a half early to wait outside of my classroom. While I'm in meetings in the morning he's pacing outside the room waiting for the meeting to end. When I have midday meetings he's waiting at my classroom begging me to skip them or bring him with me. I have no privacy. This is my 2nd year and I decided to be casually out with my students, and I was hoping the fact that I'm a lesbian would shut him down at least a little, but either he hasn't noticed or he won't accept it. I know of 2 students who had crushes on me when I did my student teaching, just to avoid the situations. Whenever we talked, I made sure to place myself in clear view of the door and our individual conversations were always with a desk between us. I was a big on making sure every student had a proper handshake and eye contact as a life skill, so that kept hugging out of my classroom. In my first year of teaching, I taught in a rural high school. Almost everyone worked on a farm. These are 2 statements from the same student. After explaining to a class all the different kinds of food I could cook, I was 23 at the time, a student said, how come you aren't married then? This one was just randomly MS. You are way too pretty to not have a boyfriend. The kid was literally working on an assignment and just blurted this out. When I was just starting, Had one of the girls, I was only 4 years older, ask me to feel her abs as she pulled up her shirt. Didn't know what to do, so I just walked out of the room. Not exactly textbook procedure on how to handle it, but my brain short-circuited for a second. I'm not particularly attractive, but I'm a young female teacher, and my students are teenagers. I have had students make really inappropriate comments before. 2 of my students got in trouble in another class because another teacher heard them having a discussion about my boobs. Hearing that grossed me out and made me want to dress even more modestly than I already do. Economics teacher here. A year or 2 back I had a boy, probably 15 to 16, always on his phone in class. I didn't know why, but I always told him to get off of it. Fast forward a few weeks and I hear him and one of his friends talking about how they were taking pictures of me. Some of them were up my skirt and using them to masturbate. The worst part is I couldn't get them out of my class with no proof, so I waited until he started spreading the pictures to get him kicked out. This still haunts me today. Back when I was student teaching, I had a male student straight up yell at me in the hall, "I think you're hot." I was in my early 20s and looked younger than that and not at all confident as a teacher, yet so I was literally speechless. Now I would have enough guts to tell them that's inappropriate, but back then I literally just stood there awkwardly with a "I wish this wasn't happening" look on my face. Had a student, not underage, ask me out. I was teaching a college class and he asked me to a ball. I told him I planned to take my fiancée. He begged me to dump plans with my fiancée. Lol. In the end he walked away disappointed. Got to give him points for boldness, I guess.